The first time I heard the whispers from the pit, I thought it was the wind. But then I saw the hands, dozens of them, clawing at the edges of the hole, pale and trembling, as if they belonged to people who had forgotten what the sun felt like. That was the day I learned what kind of king we truly had. That was the day I learned what our king had been hiding in the forest. King Obadele ruled our village like a vulture circling a dying animal. He took what he wanted and didn't care who starved. If you complained, you disappeared. No one asked questions because everyone knew the answer. Obadele had ways of making people vanish. My uncle Teo vanished when I was 12. He had refused to give the king more of his harvest, saying, "If I give more, my children will have nothing to eat." The soldiers came for him that same night. My mother told me to forget about it, but how do you forget someone you love? Weeks later, I overheard the soldiers talking. They mentioned something about the pit and laughed. They didn't know I was nearby, hiding behind the trees, listening. That was the first time I heard about it. I didn't understand what they meant, but I was too curious. So one day, I followed them. I hid far back, moving from tree to tree, trying not to make a sound. They were dragging a man. His wrists were tied, and his legs barely moved. I didn't know who he was, but he looked broken, like all the life had been beaten out of him. They walked deep into the forest, to a place I had never been before. The trees grew closer together, and the air smelled rotten. When we reached the clearing, I saw it. The pit. It was wide and deep, surrounded by loose dirt. The closer I got, the more the smell hit me, like something had been rotting there for years. Flies swarmed over the edges, and the whispers started again. I thought it was the wind at first, but then I heard my name. The soldiers didn't hear it. They dumped the man into the pit like he was a sack of yams. He didn't scream, he was too weak, but I heard the noise when he landed. It wasn't just him hitting the ground. There were others down there. I crept closer, staying low, my stomach twisting. That's when I saw them, hands, thin and ghostly, reaching up from the darkness. There were faces too, pale and hollow, their eyes like black holes. They clawed at the man, dragging him deeper into the pit. He didn't even fight. The soldiers stood around, laughing like it was nothing. One of them spit into the hole. "This is what happens to troublemakers," he said, and they walked away. I stayed frozen, staring at the pit. The whispers didn't stop. They sounded like crying, begging. And then I heard something that made my chest tighten. "Teo," one of the voices whispered. My uncle's name. I ran home that night, my legs shaking so badly I thought I would collapse. I told my mother what I had seen, but she slapped me hard across the face. "Never speak of this again," she said, her voice trembling. "Do you want the soldiers to come for us too?" But I couldn't forget. Every night, I dreamed of the pit. I heard the whispers when I was awake, too, especially when I walked through the forest. They grew louder, like they were following me. Years passed, and King Obadele grew older. His soldiers became more careless, drunk with power. People whispered about rising up, but no one dared act. They were too afraid of the pit. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I gathered some men from the village, the ones who had lost family, like me. We went to the forest with shovels and spears. The air was heavy, and the forest felt alive, like it was watching us. When we reached the pit, the whispers stopped. The silence was worse. We dug around the edges, loosening the dirt. I thought maybe we could pull the people out, but no one came. When we looked inside, the pit was empty. Nothing but bones. The next morning, the king's palace burned. Some said it was an accident. Others said it was the spirits from the pit, angry and free. I don't know the truth. All I know is the king was never seen again. But sometimes, when the wind blows through the trees, I still hear the whispers. And they still know my name.